it's always the case that when a team is struggling the way the Mets are, that the manager is the first to go, and he's probably the least culpable of everybody who has contributed to this morass of a season that the Mets are in. Injuries have played a part. Poor decisions by the front office have played a part. Guys underperforming their expectations have played a part. Mendy was a great communicator. He still is, and he'll get another job somewhere else. But the Mets had to do something, and this is the move that teams make. And maybe it'll make a difference, and maybe it won't. But I feel bad for Carlos Mendoza. It's not his fault that this team is 13 games under 500, and I'm sure he'll get another opportunity at some point down the road.
Mets have made a managerial change. Carlos Mendoza is out as Mets manager. Andy Green has been named interim manager for the remainder of the season. My initial thoughts on this, not Mendoza's fault. And I think many people in the organization would say the exact same thing. I think David Stearns will probably say that when he meets with the media. But unfortunately, when you have these types of expectations and these types of results, and especially the last couple of games with the errors and the sloppy play, usually it is the manager that is the first one held accountable, and that's what happened here today. Plenty of thoughts moving forward, but again, the news right now, Carlos Mendoza out as Mets manager.
So Carlos Mendoza is gone. Maybe the inevitable outcome in a season that has fallen apart on every level, and not because of him. Obviously, this roster was flawed. We have seen that in every way. Injuries didn't make it easier. I don't quite know what he was supposed to do with the starting rotation over the last few weeks. But yes, the last week has been embarrassing. They have been clobbered. They have not shown a lot of life. And that 6-error game was kind of the icing on the cake. Change for change's sake, yes. I think it will hit a lot of people in that clubhouse very hard who know what I think is fairly obvious from the outside, which is that everything that has gone wrong this season has been a product of maybe a poor roster setup, poor play, not necessarily poor managing. Carlos Mendoza takes the fall anyway, and the Mets will either try to save their season or start looking forward from here.
Carlos Mendoza is out as manager of the New York Mets, and like Thanos, this felt inevitable. With the team's poor start, they chose not to fire the manager when it was fashionable in Boston and Philly. They gave Carlos Mendoza, and more importantly, the players on the field, a chance to get going, to turn this ship around. And as of late, it's been really ugly. 6 errors in a game, getting swept in a doubleheader. And somebody had to pay the piper. Unfortunately for Carlos Mendoza, it was him. I think it's a player forward reason they're not playing. Health is involved, but not an excuse. All teams deal with that. And this was the last nail in the coffin, was how poor they've been playing as of late. I admire Carlos Mendoza. I would have loved to have played for him as a manager. I think he did a really good job managing the bullpen. But all that aside, this is a results-based industry, and the Mets are the opposite of winning. So I think Andy Green steps into a role where there are zero expectations. The players see that their poor play results in a firing, and we'll see what goes from here.
Well, it's been a rough few weeks or few months for this New York Mets team, and today I think is another dark day for the New York Mets, having to fire Carlos Mendoza for a record and a team performance that is really not his doing. Tough to go to war, be a general of an army without having the weapons to fight the battles, and I think Carlos was undermanned this year because of injury, because of roster choices, because of lack of performance, and he falls victim. Everybody, including myself, knows that that is the case. That is the way of the world in Major League Baseball. So I don't think anybody was really surprised necessarily by this move. Maybe surprised that it took this long because of the free fall that this Mets team has been in. And for the sloppy play, not just the sloppy record, but the sloppy play that we've seen really become the earmark of this team over the past couple of weeks. So with that said, time to move forward. You saw the team that they're playing tonight, Philadelphia, has an interim manager that is 16 games over 500 since he took over back in April. And the Mets are hoping for some of that kind of energy. I think you've got to look to the kids that are on this Mets team, A.J. Ewing, Carson Bench, even Francisco Alvarez, if he can get a little more consistent to be some of the young energy, and you got to get Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor in the lineup at the same time. Or remarkably, only 9 times this season have they played in the same lineup. So there's a lot of work ahead. I think this organization is still doing some searching to see what's next with the trade deadline approaching. But here we are at the All-Star break. I said this winter, when the moves were made to let go with some of the really popular and successful players that this Mets team had in the past, that we had to kind of give it at least till the All-Star break to assess the off-season moves and the ability to build a team with some possibility of sustainable success. So far, at least what we're seeing at this All-Star break is a team that's poorly underperformed, but also with some roster moves and roster construction that is going to take some serious overhauling, I think, to get right. So that said, tough day. Feel for Carlos Mendoza. He's a good man and a good baseball man and a good family man. And to me, he will be missed. Now, let's see what happens in the next chapter of the 2026 New York Mets.